When you look at the contours of a potential deal, what are the key factors that both sides will be bringing to the table?
Well, I think the most important thing is for both sides to be committed to a negotiated settlement. Now, right from the start, I saw a problem in this particular process, and that was that Prime Minister Netanyahu set himself two goals. His first goal was to see the total demise of Hamas, and secondly, to negotiate the release of the hostages and the return to the families. I found those goals totally incompatible. You cannot say to someone you're negotiating with, well, my intention really is to eliminate you, but alongside that, I'm going to do my best to get the hostages out. And I think that's what's been the stumbling block all along.
What do you think the end game will be here? Because there seems to be, I mean, the question I'm asking my listeners, Oliver, is if there is no ceasefire now, what more can both sides hope to achieve? But the question is, what kind of ceasefire? Because Benjamin Netanyahu clearly wants a temporary truce yet again before regrouping and trying to completely decapitate Hamas. There are some people on his own side who agree with that, others who completely disagree with it. And Hamas, I'm not exactly sure what their end game is either.
Yeah, I think, Ali, what is essential and has been for several months now is a permanent ceasefire. I used to go to Gaza before this conflict almost once a month. And the pictures I'm getting from Gaza is just quite devastating to look at. And the stories of the impact it's having on, remember, 2.3 million people is horrendous. Likewise, the situation of the hostages, they're being locked up there for over 10 months now. What they and their families are suffering is equally awful. So I think for the sake of humanity, for the sake of the world order, you know, the principled rule-based order that we try to operate on, I think it's essential that there is a ceasefire, and it's a permanent ceasefire, and that we start learning how to rebuild and get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is occupation has to end and a Palestinian state has to be established. I think without that, we run the risk of, even if there's a so-called permanent ceasefire now, it will be temporary because the root will still be a cause of friction and resistance.
Now, Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, has said in private meeting, which was then leaked, that Benjamin Netanyahu's goal of total victory over Hamas was essentially a futile one. Can you actually ever have a total victory, not only over an organization, but over an idea which many people out there that might not be formal members of Hamas might subscribe to?
Well, in my opinion, what I see and know of Gaza, I think if occupation ends, if there is a Palestinian state that's viable and economically successful and so forth, I think the grievance that is driving this conflict will be gone. There'll be no point in people joining resistance movements. And I think the key, therefore, is not just another truce, you know, where we carry on as it has been for the past over 55 years now, since the 67 war. We carry on with that, but we radically change the situation. I think that is the key, and that's the way to the success, and the way that the people of Gaza, like anywhere else, want a normal life, a normal existence.
But let's be clear, Oliver. I mean, it's a pretty seductive outline that you've painted there, that if the cause for grievance is taken away, which is occupation, inverted commas, then that will solve the issue. But it won't really, because Hamas's charter states that it wants to see the destruction of Israel. I mean, have they had a change of heart?
Ali, a long time ago, I think in 2006, when Hamas made the decision to enter into elections, it was a very similar process that we have witnessed nearer home here in our own islands, when the Irish Republican movement decided to take the political option to solve their grievance. Sadly, 2006, what we saw, the gesture of Hamas was rejected because conditions were put that were not possible to accept by the international community, particularly America then. And subsequently, they did make efforts. They changed the charter in 2017. They put up a new political vision, which they accepted the presence of Israel. Again, that was rejected. So, for the past, and since 2007, we've had the whole dialogue that should be with the political wing of Hamas completely blocked by prescriptions. So, I think the West, when I say the West, the international community, in particular the Western countries, we too have an awful lot to answer for and are, I think, partly responsible for the current situation.
Oliver, final question. Do you think that there's been so much talk of a two-state solution going back for the last 50-odd years? Do you think that actually at this present point, it is more appropriate to talk of a three-state solution, given the fact that West Bank is being ruled by the Palestinian Authority. Gaza is still being run by Hamas, not particularly effectively, but it is. And never the twain shall meet. I mean, they can't see eye to eye. So how can you have another state, a Palestinian state, which is not contiguous? It is divided by Israeli land, where you've got two wings of this potential state being completely run by people at loggerheads.
Ali, there's at least 9 members of the new technocrat government in Ramallah from Gaza, people who have lived their whole lives as professionals in Gaza. I think the links between the Palestinians in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza are very deep. They're family links. They're really there. And even in Gaza, you sit sometimes with families, and you'll have some members in Fatah, you'll have some in Hamas, and you'll have other members of the family saying a curse on both of your houses. We don't accept either of the political positions. Palestinians are like anyone else. There's a split in different political options people make. People have different levels of belief and so forth. I think given the opportunity, we will see a united, viable Palestinian state. And I think that's what we've got to work for if we want to see a permanent peace in the region.
Thank you very much indeed, Oliver. That was Oliver McTernan, director and co-founder of Forward Thinking, an organisation based in the UK which focuses on resolving conflicts in the Middle East. He's also a former hostage negotiator. Let me give you my thoughts. Look, I would love nothing more than to see this senseless killing end. I mean, it's absolutely appalling. What happened on October the 7th, where this began, was appalling, absolutely terrible. Worst attack on Israeli soil. And clearly, they view that as their 9/11. Since then, so many thousands of people, apparently the Israeli government sources say they've killed about 14,000 combatants. Well, according to the Hamas Gaza Health Run ministry there have been about 40,000 deaths. So even if you take out 14,000, you're still talking about the best part of 36,000 civilians that have been killed. Even if you don't want to take the Gazan health ministry figures, thousands and thousands of people have died. So we do need to have a ceasefire. But you see, to get to a ceasefire, you need both parties who actually come, one, in good faith, and two, have to be able to coalesce around some sort of middle ground where both sides realize that they're not going to get exactly what they want. I don't exactly know what Hamas wants other than the destruction of Israel, despite what Oliver has just said there. That has always been their mantra. Now, that might be hot air. I don't know exactly where their red lines are. And I'm not exactly sure I know where Benjamin Netanyahu's red lines are, because all the rhetoric has been that I want total victory over Hamas, which means rooting them out completely from the territory, all of their leadership, all of their networks and tunnels, and also getting back all of the hostages. Now, it's very clear that US senior figures in the government there are saying that you're not going to be able to get both of those things done. You can either focus on getting the hostages back, the over 100 hostages that are still being held by Hamas in Gaza. We understand that a third of them may have been killed. We don't know. We're just not sure. But whoever is remaining, if that is the priority, you cannot continue with this idea that you're going to wipe out every last remnant of Hamas. If you want to go down that road, you basically forget about the hostages. That's the argument that is sort of coming out from the US. So there has to be an accommodation somewhere. But it has to be done with both parties coming in good faith. I'm just not sure where we are with this, quite honestly. I honestly hope that there is a ceasefire, but I'm not confident there will be one because I'm just not sure that both parties are acting in good faith. Benjamin Netanyahu's in a lot of domestic pressure. We know that he has... it has been argued in Israel itself that he has every incentive for this war to continue, and a lot of Israeli hostage families are very, very deeply troubled by that, understandably, and have been demonstrating outside the Knesset for months. On the other side, the Gazans are being totally ill-served by a weak leadership that does not have their interests at heart. My question is this: if there is no ceasefire now, what more can both sides hope to achieve?